Welcome to the Underdog Podcast, where we speak with lawyers, find out their stories about how they overcame obstacles. And it's so much fun today to be with Pat Cummings, who's been a fella on my side of the Army for years and years and years. We've taken on a lot of big foes, a lot of big corporations, a lot of big trucking companies. So it's going to be fun to sit and talk with him. And you guys can get to know Pat a little bit. I think he's 37 or so right now. He'll let you know, but 37-year-old lawyer, so entering the prime as a trial lawyer, and just has taken off the last 5 or 6 years, where he's pretty much taken over the first chair of the big trucking cases. And so I'm so happy to welcome Pat to the show. Welcome, Pat.
Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
So it was a long journey walking up the stairs from downstairs at our law firm to come here, but I wanted to, I think I've told you the story about how I met you. Your father and I were working at a homeless shelter. We had the night shift. It was 2:00 to 6:00 in the morning. And I find your father, Dan Cummings, to be a very fascinating guy. I'd never met him before. But when you're from the 2:00 to 6 a.m. shift, there's really no option other than to start talking to somebody. So I was talking to him, and he told me he's a lawyer, a criminal defense lawyer, which I found interesting. And he had some great stories. And he told me about if I read any books, and they told me about the 5 books he's reading right now. And then I came around to the family, and he said that he had a son that was in law school. And I said, I have a law firm. Have him stop by. And so I think eventually I got a call from you, and we sat down, and that's how I met you, right?
Yeah, that's the story I've heard too. My dad said that this is a guy that you should call up if this type of law is something you're even remotely interested in. And so I called you up, and I think I started clerking within a few days after that.
That's pretty good. It's a pretty good interview. So let's let everybody get to know you a little bit, Pat. So you take a lot of depositions, but and so you find out people's backgrounds, but this isn't a deposition. I just want to know, and the listeners are going to want to know, how somebody goes from where you're at to where you're at, the position you're in now. So tell us a little bit of the early years in Lisle, Illinois, like where you went to school and that type of thing.
Sure. I grew up in, when I was born, I was in Wheaton, and then from about 2 through high school, I was in Lisle. I went to St. Joan of Arc School with John, who's been at our firm for probably close to a decade now. And then both of us went to, we've got a similar career history, went to Bennett Academy in Lisle, spent 4 years there. And then we both also went to Marquette University in Milwaukee. I kind of knew when I went to Marquette that I was going to pursue being a lawyer, but I went to the business school there because I figured if I went to law school and I hated it, this would be something that I could fall back on and get a job in the corporate world. Ultimately, I went to law school. I started in Philadelphia. I had a bunch of friends in Philadelphia that I studied abroad with, and I wanted to just get out of the Midwest and see a different city. So I went to Drexel for a year. And then after about a year, I was like, I love Philly, great town, but I want to be back home. So I transferred back home. Finished at Northern Illinois and graduated in 2014 and started working here shortly after that.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was right when you came back from Drexel that you started clerking with us when you were at Northern during school. And so that's how I got to know you. And so that it's really 2014.
Yeah, I think February of 2014 is when I started. I was a 3L at Northern. I was doing full-time class, and I also had graduate assistantship, so I had to be out there working like 20 or 25 hours a week. And so I kind of just like moonlit here on Friday afternoons and Saturdays.
Yeah, it was a small firm back then, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was me, you, and an assistant. Yeah.
Yeah, those were the good old days. Let's talk a little bit about your background. Let's talk about your family a little bit. Tell me about your mom first. Let folks know what kind of mom you had.
Sure. So my mom, she's from Minnesota. So she's, got that Minnesota nice that they all seem to have. She went to college at Loyola University in Rogers Park. in Chicago. She got set up on a blind date with my dad, ended up, falling in love, marrying him, and they settled out in the western suburbs here. She worked when I was a real young kid before I, was recording memories. So I don't remember those times, but then she kind of went to the stay-at-home mom role and kind of kept the ship afloat for, the next 15 years, raising myself, my two siblings. And then when I was in high school, I think she just wanted a little bit more. So she went back to work and worked for another 20 years. Shows that you can have a gap in the resume and still be employable. And she went back, worked for 20 years. And then last year she just retired. So she had a nice career arc.
Good for her.
Mm-hmm.
How about your father? What's your father's journey?
Yeah. So he grew up in Bellwood in the near west suburbs of Chicago. He went to Fenwick High School, graduated in 79 with John's dad. So a lot of through lines there in that relationship. Then he went to Benedictine University. Back then it was called Illinois Benedictine College, right across the street from Bennett. And then he went to law school at John Marshall, started working for a couple of lawyers, criminal defense lawyers. I think he always kind of knew he wanted to do that type of work. And then eventually that was a bit chaotic. So when he got an offer to start at the DuPage County Public Defender's Office, my mom was like, this is a steady paycheck. I need you to jump at this so you don't have, you aren't working for people that it's just such chaos all the time. You're running around to different courtrooms. You're trying cases that, you're probably not ready to try because, maybe the other lawyer didn't show up or whatever. But so he went to the public defender's office, was there for, I want to say 3 or 4 years, got a ton of experience, and then hung his own shingle. And he's been doing that for over 30 years now, private criminal defense practice.
Here's a quick plug for folks that need help with criminal defense representation. Google Dan Cummings. He's going to be a guest on our show down the road here, but just the most down-to-earth, great guy. Is a way better person than he is a lawyer, and he's a really good lawyer. And so I can kind of see, just knowing Pat's parents, how Pat turned out. But anyway, he's been terrific for us. I've sent, I don't know, dozens of people his way, and I think he's like 100 on satisfaction rate. So, some of them were in really, really bad trouble, and I don't think he, got them completely out of harm's way, but he did the best that he could. So
yeah, you can't change the facts on some of those, and he wasn't there for those, but yeah, he certainly tries to come through for people as best he can.
Oh, awesome. So, you're in law school at Northern. You come work with us. You end up taking the bar. When was your first deposition after graduating law school?
So my first deposition was, I don't think it was the day I got sworn in, but it was within a week of getting sworn in. And it was an expert orthopedic surgeon who, when I was, talking to some other lawyers that I know, and I said I was deposing this guy, they were all like, I can't believe that guy's still around. So he was old then. And I think on the day I got sworn in, I actually had 3 depositions scheduled, which fortunately, based on a variety of things, I had to get moved around because that would have been a little bit aggressive on the first day as a lawyer. But yeah, the first deposition was an expert doctor, so a bit of a trial by fire to start.
That's awesome. I kind of the management style. You'd already been with us for a couple summers and during the year, so I knew that it wasn't like sending somebody that doesn't understand what we're doing. And I understood that the only way you get better in this business is by doing. And so I think it was good for your career to start doing that stuff. Because I think one thing I know about you, Pat, is that you're not intimidated by situations. One of the reasons why I recruit folks that are athletes is and Pat, you were an athlete, right?
Yeah, I played basketball in high school.
Yeah, and so he played at Bennett Academy, which is I think it's the number one college or high school basketball program. I know my son Johnny, who's at St. Francis, would kind of hope he's not listening to that. But over the last 20 years, I think it's the perennial best, and you played for those guys, and so the reason why I like folks to work with me that have done sports is because you learn how to win, you learn how to lose. There's a certain resilience, and in our business, that comes in handy, no?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You have to learn how to handle bad news, bad situations. And then you have to learn how to handle good situations with grace. And I do want to correct the record a little bit. I do agree that Bennett is a premier basketball program in the state for the last 20 years. It wasn't quite the same program when I was there, but we like to take some credit for building the foundation.
There you go. Well, take something. So, one of the hallmarks of what we've kind of built. So the great part about the law firm that Pat and I work at is we decided that we wanted to work on cases that we would try. And so there's very few cases that we take in personal injury wise that we would be embarrassed to put on in front of a jury. We want to make sure that if we do impanel a jury, that they're interested in the case, that it's about something that's bigger, and it's something that they have to right or wrong. So how soon after you started practicing in 2014 were you doing trucking type cases?
Pretty much right away, just by nature of the cases that were already in kind of our stockpile when I started. So we had probably 2 or 3 what I would consider sort of bigger trucking cases. And me just being so paranoid about, looking like an idiot when I was still learning what I was doing, I just totally immersed myself in those cases and learned a lot about the injuries and the doctors. I learned how to talk to some of our experts about how to convey what their opinions are about a various case to jurors. So yeah, basically from the beginning of my career as a PI lawyer, I've been handling heavy trucking cases.
Is it easy to handle these types of cases?
No, I don't think it's easy handling, not even just trucking cases. I think motor vehicle cases have their own set of complexities, but certainly no, trucking cases are like a souped up car crash. So I know our first trial, we had somebody described a commercial motor vehicle crash as sort of a garden variety crash. And what I've come to learn over the last 12 plus years of practice is there really isn't a garden variety case. So I don't think any case is easy, but certainly not trucking case.
When I don't know if you were there still when the appeal was going for Talek versus C.H. Robinson.
I think that had resolved shortly before I came aboard, or there were still some like pendant cases because I know that case went on for like 10 years.
Right.
But I think your involvement was closed by the time I started.
Yeah. So just for our listeners, our law firm handled a case called Talek versus C.H. Robinson, in which it was very interesting to me to reiterate what Pat says, that there's really no superficial case that is a trucking case. The case that we got in Talek versus C.H. Robinson was a case in which a very small trucking company and driver had driven into stop traffic at about 70 miles an hour and killed 2 people and then permanently injured my client, Bill Talek. And they had told us that they had all that was available for insurance was, I think it was either $750,000 or $1 million. And so that's when the game started, as far as trying to figure out who was going to actually pay for all this mayhem. So when I was hired by the Taleks, I wanted to make sure that I turned over every single rock and make sure that we knew exactly who was benefiting from this transaction. Well, the long and short of that was that we found out that the broker who brokered the load, C.H. Robinson, was heavily involved in the management, care, hiring of these folks, and had a big impact on this crash. And so I ended up bringing a lawsuit against C.H. Robinson. We ended up getting a very large judgment against them. I believe it's one of the first ever trials to get a judgment. And then there was an appellate court opinion, which you can find, which is heavily cited to this day. And I found out during that, I want to say it was like a 5 or 6 years of litigation before we get to trial. I learned way back when that there is no such thing as a garden variety or a simple case. In any case, there's always more to find out. And I think what Patrick's done is take it to the next level. So when he came on board after that case, he took the work that we did and then went even further and studied a lot of things that need to be studied. So tell us what's under the hood in those cases as far as what type of regulations, that type of thing.
Yeah, let me just comment quickly on what you were talking about with TALIC. I certainly, that was before my time starting here, but that's a North Star case for our firm and has been for a long time. And I'm sure I've used just about every document from that case as a template for something in another case, or just, using those as kind of guides for how we handle some of these other trucking cases. But under the hood of a trucking case, a lot of it is trying to think creatively and trying to figure out who all the various parties might be. Because if you just have a single truck driver, maybe he's an owner operator, it looks like it's going to be a limited recovery just because there's not a ton of insurance. But as that case and the documents from that case showed me, that once you peel back the onion, you can learn a lot more about other parties that are involved, who's all profiting off of the exchange, and then where insurance coverage can be found.
Right. And so one of the things about that I learned, fairly early on about trucking cases is that there are a number of regulations that apply to both drivers and trucking companies. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, they have not a list, but several chapters of federal statute that are regulations that all motor carriers or trucking companies that operate in America have to follow. And that goes from qualifying the drivers to make sure that they're safe operators, they know what they're doing, they have a CDL, all these things. It goes to what some of the equipment that's required on the trucks, and then some of the record keeping and document retention that the companies have to follow to make sure that if something bad happens, we have proof that you were dotting the I's and crossing the T's of all the safety things that you're supposed to be doing. So that is kind of like our guiding light on trucking cases. Is first thing you do, look at the regulations, what was violated, and did those violations, were they a cause of why this crash occurred? And 9 times out of 10 they are.
Is there a state component to that too?
So the federal regulations from the FMCSA, they've been adopted by all 50 states. So even the federal government, the Congress, they can create statutes if something's involved in interstate commerce. But because the states have adopted it, even if you have small mom and pop trucking companies that are just operating, let's say within Illinois, they still have to follow many, if not all, of the regulations in the federal regs.
So in these cases, what's the hardest thing to overcome in these cases?
The hardest thing to overcome, I would say, is information lag, meaning that the insurance company for a trucking company, they're going to be on site certainly within 24 hours, taking pictures, getting statements, seeing if there's any video cameras. And just because of the nature of being on the plaintiff side, we often don't get that kind of head start because our clients, they may passed away, they may be in surgery, they may not call us for days or weeks or months after the crash. So we're always kind of starting from behind the 8 ball. But the earlier you can start investigating a case and start collecting information and evidence, the better it's going to be. So I think that the biggest hurdle is information.
So looking retroactively, what would you like to tell yourself back, when you graduated into the 14 that you know now that you didn't know then about these cases?
As far as like a lesson, I would say just keep digging, because even if you send out, subpoenas or discovery, I've had so many different times where trucking companies say, we don't have this document, or we don't have extra insurance, or we don't have this. And then if you keep fighting to try to get those documents, they're often out there, and you've kind of forced their hand to reveal everything that they know about what happened.
So you wrote a book, right?
I did.
I'm looking at the title, Avoiding a Trucking Nightmare, What You Need to Know After a Truck-Related Injury by Patrick Cummings.
Yeah, I can't take credit for the catchy title. I think that was inspired by a former colleague of ours.
And this was written in 2020. It may be time for a new book, Pat.
Yeah, volume 2.
Yeah, and so what I really like about this book is it really talks about stuff that I think one of the things that we want to do at our firm is become the thought leader in this area. and um, and share that information with the general public, so they can make good decisions. I mean, I'm looking at the different chapters here, and what makes a trucking case different. What I do after a trucking crash? Is my case even a trucking case? How can I recover in my truck crash case? How can a trucking attorney help me? How do I hire one? All these types of things. So these are great tools for people. Our super employee, Brittany Peterson, put these on our put this on our website, so you can just download it directly at shannonlawgroup.com. Or if you text trucking at 312-847-2428, we'll send you a copy of the book, which Patrick wrote a long time ago. And I think most of the stuff is the same as it was back then. But are you thinking about writing a new book?
I guess I am now, or at least an update to this one. But I'll say the reason we wrote this book is because when we meet with the client, you maybe get like an hour with them at the initial consultation, and you try to give them a background of what to expect and what's coming down the pipeline. But it's just so much information that it's almost impossible to expect anyone to retain all of it. So this is just a nice guideline to say, here's kind of what the process looks like. Here are some frequently asked questions that maybe consult with the book first. And then obviously if something's not clear in there, or if they have follow-up questions, whatever, I'm certainly happy to answer them. But this gives them something to go back to if they have quick questions.
Yeah, it's one thing I really like about the thought leadership concept is that Pat's, as a young attorney and now entering his prime, is basically saying, hey, here's what the world we're in. Here's the playground where I play, and not hiding information from you or requiring you to pay him for it. He's more than willing to sit down and talk to you and say, hey, this is my experience. This is what I do. I go to national conferences on this stuff once or twice a year to keep up on the cutting edge. I'm going to share that information with you because it's part of being a professional. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is, what do people usually get wrong about your work?
Well, if anyone thinks that being a personal injury lawyer is easy, that certainly is something I would fight back against. It's not, making a phone call and having somebody write you a check. It's a lot more involved than that. It's insurance companies that you have to force to turn over money, and they don't make profits giving away money. So, that would be a big one. I suppose some of it is how we get our cases. I know that there's like stereotypes about personal injury lawyers. Obviously, we don't engage in any of that type of stuff. I just think we've had a lot of good experience. We've came through for a lot of people, and I think we have offer a good product. So I just want to, as part of the book, and then obviously this podcast, let people know what we do. And if they're interested in hiring us, we're happy to work with you.
So here's a misconception, I think, is, do you hate truckers?
Not at all. No. We represented truckers before. Truckers get hurt too. A lot of times truckers in some of our crash cases, in some ways, they're the victims too, where they get put in impossible situations. They've got deadlines that they can't possibly meet with keeping their hours of service hours, or they're, rushed to load or unload, or there are a variety of things that their company puts pressures on them that they're just not able to meet. And when you do that, safety corners get cut and people get hurt.
Right. How about this one? Lawsuits make truckers go out of business.
Well, most of in fact, all of the trucking companies that we've sued have insurance. And so that's sort of the way that they get to offset their risk of operating is you insure yourselves. But I think one of our jobs as plaintiff lawyers is to make sure that we hold people to the standard of following the safety rules. And if you're going to have companies, and this is 60 Minutes just did a story about chameleon carriers, so it's kind of in the zeitgeist right now. But if you have trucking companies that are just eschewing public safety rules for money savings, and as a result, people get hurt, I think that's our job to kind of force them to conform to those standards so that we have safer roadways. So certainly it's a risk. It has never happened for me, but I think we want safe trucking companies on the road.
Yeah. One of the things that try to explain to people. 'Cause I was a defense attorney. I represented insurance companies for 8 years. And then for the past 30, I've been representing people. And one of the things I like to tell people from a larger perspective is that, so the court system is a dispute resolution system. The opposite of what we do here is if somebody was hurt, they would go over to somebody's house and eye for an eye, and that would be it. So through our taxes, we've paid for a dispute resolution system, which is a judiciary, trial by jury, all that type of stuff. People in every walk of life as humans are going to make mistakes. And truckers make mistakes, drivers make mistakes, professionals make mistakes, all of us make mistakes. And that's why the insurance company is flourishing. I usually look at the skyline of most big cities, and insurance companies seem to be doing okay. They've taken enough premiums to offset any liabilities. And by the way, to reiterate what you're talking about, Pat, if somebody says that what we do is easy, let me tell you what exactly it is. I had probably one of the number one insurance coverage lawyers who represented policyholders from New York. Really good guy. He's recently passed away. Told me that usually when insurance companies have to pay over $1 million back then, I think it was 15 years ago, maybe it's the threshold's higher, they required the policyholder to file suit. And I thought about that. There's typically not really a lot of checks being written above 7 figures without filing a lawsuit. So the biggest user of the court system by far are insurance companies. And a lot of them, if they've paid out, they have the thing called subrogation, which they will go after a responsible party. And I think as a society, we want people that are actively negligent, reckless, or cause intentional harm to be the ones that actually pay for the loss as opposed to the taxpayers. Because the alternative is if we had no insurance, no court system, and the taxpayers would be the one paying for somebody that's in a hospital for a long time or in a nursing home or whatever. And we're protecting these people's economies, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's go through what a truck accident lawsuit looks like in Illinois. If you could just run through that, the procedure. I know it's in the book, but just run through it.
Sure. So on our end, the first thing is we get a phone call, whether it's from the patient themselves or a family member or a lawyer who's friendly with the individual that got hurt. And depending on when that phone call comes in, kind of dictates what our action is. And ideally, the phone call comes in very shortly after the crash or unloading accident or whatever it is. And then we can actually get out to the scene. We can take a look at it. We can photograph it. We can get an investigator out to get statements, to canvass the area to see if there's any videotapes, surveillance cams or ring cameras. And so there's a lot of activity early on where we're just gathering information. Oftentimes we'll have to go actually find the vehicles where they are. They're usually at like a salvage yard, and we'll go inspect the vehicles, take a whole bunch of photographs of the vehicles, and then download the electronic control module of the vehicle, or sometimes called the black box, which just records a ton of data about speeds and braking and what the steering was. So you can find out what we do is kind of we're investigators as part of our job. And so we have to find out exactly what happened so we can explain to a jury ultimately how it happened and why it happened.
And then if you determine that it's a good case to file, I'm assuming you file it?
We try to file it right away. That's just kind of been our firm's practice for as long as I've been here. We're in Cook County, which is one of the biggest, we're actually in DuPage, but we file a lot of our cases in Cook County, which is, if not the biggest, it's the top 3 judicial system in terms of volume in the country. So when you file a case, you get in line for a trial date, and trial date is kind of what pushes everything as far as we're concerned. It's when offers get more serious. It's when it forces insurance companies to spend a lot of money on experts in defending the case and trial preparation. So we just like to get in line as early as we can, even if maybe we don't have every single medical record yet, just to get the ball rolling and get an end date when the thing is going to be the case is going to be resolved or tried.
Right. Yeah, I like that. I like that approach to aggressing, because you also have subpoena power to get more information, right?
That's true.
Obviously, that when we talk about trial date, I know that you and I have had this talk for the last 12 years, is that we fully intend to try every case that is triable before a jury. And I think we express that to their side, immediately, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what kind of drives settlement offers. Yeah, it obviously helps us prepare for trial. But if the opposing counsel and more importantly, the insurance company knows that this is somebody who's willing to go to trial and roll the bones and ask for a lot more money than they're willing to pay, then they're in the risk industry. So that's a risk to them that they want to try to mitigate. So that's when, negotiations usually will occur if they know that you're willing to take it to trial and ask for a lot of money.
All right, let's get to the meat of the podcast, which is the Underdog Podcast. I like that. Don't you like
that is good.
The gavel and the whole thing. The guy pushed it up, and
so a little Sisyphus.
Let's talk about a little underdog cases you've handled. The odds were against you. You were up against a Goliath, whatever it is. Facts were tough. Why don't you talk to us about a few of those cases?
Sure. I can just talk. Some of them have like confidentiality in play, so I will try not to use names. But some issues that we've had in terms of hurdles, we had a big trucking crash maybe 7 or 8 years ago where our client had no memory of the crash. So we jumped on that case. We got a call early, fortunately. We jumped on that case right away. We got our investigator to talk to the other driver who told us that, she was making a left-hand turn at a time when she shouldn't have been making a left-hand turn. Our client was coming straight through a green at an intersection. And if we hadn't jumped on that right away and gotten that investigator to get that statement, I don't know if we would have gotten the same result, because when we deposed the driver of the truck, maybe a year after the crash happened, her story was completely different than the story she gave to the investigator. So just reiterating what I said earlier, that the most important thing is information, and the most important time to get that information is early.
Right. Yeah, I remember that one. Our client came in, told us that she had no memory of the crash. She was really messed up. Remember that, Pat?
She had a bad brain injury, in addition to a number of orthopedic injuries.
Right, and the other driver had a clear memory of the crash, and was saying the other lady, our lady, had made a left-hand turn right in front of her, which usually is a death knell to a case, right?
Yeah, that's certainly a bad fact.
So. Yeah, the resilience factor, just so you guys know, so the resilience factor is huge, because you can't make any assumptions in this business. So everything's got to be proven. If you're instructed by a jury in a personal injury case, it's proof by a preponderance of the evidence, which means more likely than not. But here at our firm, we have a much more strict, in-house standard, which is, hey, we're going to prove this, like, not beyond a reasonable doubt, but by a lot. So what else do you remember about that case?
Well, I just want to add, kind of on our theme of information can be difficult to get sometimes. I don't know if you remember this, Joe, but you were deposing the president of that trucking company, or I think he was identified as the corporate representative for the company at that time. And during the course of the deposition, which was about 2 weeks after our plaintiff's deposition, he told you that a week earlier he had purged his entire voicemail system, which means that they had recorded line for all of their drivers, so that when they called into dispatch, everything would be recorded, so they'd have be able to go back and find what somebody's issue was, or where they were stopped, or whatever. And he claims that he just hit purge, not knowing what it meant. But the fact that it came about a week after our client said that she had no memory of the crash was obviously a massive red flag, and it kind of blew up the case. And I think that they might have been looking for a short-term solution that caused them more longer-term headaches, and ultimately forced their hand to resolve the case.
So let me tell you how that that one played out a little bit. So not only did we learn that this guy deleted all the voicemails because the drivers were supposed to be in communication with the home office all the time, and they were all recorded, and he got rid of all that, deleted all that stuff. The second thing is there was a system they had in play that kept track of the vehicle's actual to and fro at all time through a computer. And they deleted that too, or never produced it. Then there was a point, that I basically said to Pat, okay, this is one that you're going to start rolling with. And I remember there was one corporate dep that was very interesting that you took. Do you remember that?
If I'm thinking of the same one you're thinking of, yeah.
So what happened in that deposition?
Yeah, so this was a few days after your deposition of the corporate rep. Mine was, or it might have even been a supplemental deposition of that same individual in a different capacity, whatever. But I was taking his deposition, and we spent about 2 hours going through what his procedures were, what his company policies were, all of these things that were clearly deficient in terms of following the safety regulations from the federal government. But he was not aware of that. He didn't know that. But then we confronted him with an application for a motor carrier license. So when you file an application for the motor carrier license with the US DOT, you have to certify under penalty of perjury that I understand the regulations, I've reviewed them, I know them, I have somebody in my company that is in charge of enforcing them and making sure they're being followed. And when I confronted him with that and said, you signed this document swearing that you had these things in place, did you have them in place? And at that point, he pled the Fifth Amendment, refused to answer the question. And that kind of was the beginning of the end of that case.
Yeah, I've never had somebody take the Fifth Amendment in a civil case. And so Pat was the first guy to get that done. So congratulations, Pat. Hopefully you'll have many people that do that in the future. But the key thing for that was, in my view, was that Pat was so dogged at getting every document from the personnel file, every document that they had filed in either federal or state agencies, every document, et cetera, and had this big checklist. And he was going to make sure that this woman in the nursing home had the best advocate in a boardroom for her to take care of her, to make sure that she was going to be taken care of for the rest of her life. And I'll tell you, when he came back, I may have been at that dep. I don't remember if I was or wasn't, but I just remember shaking my head, said, this is something else, is that we got a guy that, and they took it more than once, right?
You know what? He did only take it once because he just basically communicated, I'm not going to answer any of those questions. If I had to do it again, I was probably 4 years as a lawyer by then. If I had to do it right now, I would ask him 100 more questions and make him plead the Fifth 100 more times.
Yeah. And we videotape every deposition. So that was on videotape. And so that was not a pretty thing for them, but the case went on for a lot longer because it was a heavily contested case. And it was something that, they were not going to give up and they were not going to pay, and they didn't pay for a long time. So, congratulations. Do you know, how about any other cases that you remember?
Yeah, we've had, anytime you get a trucking case, there are going to be complications with it, from both the liability side and from a damages and what the injury is side of it. The liability side, obviously, on every trucking case, you're going to have an expert saying everything was fine. We did everything according to what the regs say. And then sometimes you get things with injuries that, like we have a client in the unloading, our first kind of unloading case. We had a client who was a young guy, 30 years old, who he had 2 herniated discs in his back. So, if you're thinking, what would a reasonable person do in that situation? Well, if there's a surgery you can get to help fix it, you would get it. But our client refused to get it. And I completely understand why he did. He had family members that had bad history with back surgeries. There were other complications. So he didn't. And so I understand why he didn't get the surgery. But an insurance company now just looks at that as a back injury, no surgery. So he's just a file number with that code put into their system as to what the value of the case is. But as you get to know your clients a lot more and you figure out, the reasons why things are happening, like for example, your decision to get treated medically or alternative treatments, you find out a lot more about the person, and it kind of helps you build a bit better case in a lot of ways. Because if he had gotten the surgery and he was, fully, fixed, nobody's ever actually fixed after a surgery, but that case would have gone one way. And the fact that he wasn't able to, and it's something he's going to have to deal with as a new normal for the next, 50, however many years of his life. In some ways, that was what I viewed as a hurdle actually ended up being like something we stressed and highlighted, that this is just something he's going to have to deal with forever.
Right. So one of the things that we teach here at our law firm is to not run away from stubborn facts or tough facts and just embrace them, because our whole thing with the jury is we want to make sure that we're the truth tellers and we're the ones that are explaining to them why this is in front of a jury, as opposed to, hey, we're here to hit a lottery or something like that. None of that ever happens. That's defense propaganda, etc. What we're trying to do is make sure that our person is put back whole to where they would have been prior to the crash. And so in that case that Pat was talking about, the fella it was a serious injury he had. He had 2 herniated discs that he felt 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He was a guy that worked with his hands, and was going to have to deal with that the rest of his life. And so his medical bills were lower because he didn't have these surgeries and anesthesiology and all this physical therapy, all this stuff because what he had couldn't be fixed properly. If they would have gone in and done the surgery, it could have been more complications for him, because back surgeries, there's no guarantee on any of that stuff. I'm grateful for all those surgeons that do that, and I'm hopeful that they are all successful. But we've seen a ton of clients where it's been, maybe stop one problem, but then they get another problem. So that type of finesse in dealing with that type of case. How about some other cases? Do you have any other cases that were kind of underdog for you that you felt, hey, I felt like, you did the right thing and came through for people?
Yeah. A lot of our cases just feel like underdog cases because we're dealing with individual people, and oftentimes we're suing corporations. So they have, all of the resources. They've got insurance money. They're willing to go spend to find some of the best experts in the country. And trust me, those experts are willing to say whatever they need to say. So yeah, in a lot of ways, every time we have a trucking case, it feels like an underdog because it's just a couple of lawyers. It's usually me or you or Robert going against the might of an insurance company. It's kind of what drew me to law, because initially I was thinking about being a criminal defense lawyer, and I was like, I'd like to be in the one person in someone's corner against the weight of the government. And so I ended up finding that, but just in a little bit different pathway.
Tell me about your first solo trial where you were, I wasn't anywhere near the courthouse, and you were in there and you were picking a jury and representing a client. What did that feel like?
It was, in part exciting, in part terrifying, because I really it was kind of I'd done one or two trials before, so I had some understanding of what happens, but I hadn't done it on my own before. And that one, I was fortunate enough that I had a co-counsel. We had one client. This other fella had 4 clients that were in the back of this limo that ended up getting T-boned. So we were able to share duties a little bit, and he would ask the primary questions of a particular witness, and then I might do it for another witness. But just having someone there to kind of pick up if I missed anything, it was certainly reassuring. And it was a very fun process. We got a good result. The jury was out for like 2 days on, not the biggest case in the world, but they certainly took their time. They took their job seriously. And it was a very rewarding experience for hopefully everyone involved.
One of my favorite Pat Cummings moments was when we tried a case against a cab company, and we had a gal who was walking across a crosswalk. She's a nurse in near West Suburban Chicago, and she got hit, and she had Parkinson's disease, and so she had a shoulder problem, but you couldn't have surgery because of the Parkinson's, and so her medical bills were under 20 grand, maybe.
Like 18 or 19 grand.
Yeah. And we were taking on this cab company, which are notorious in Chicago for never paying anything. And so, early on, my first call was to the cab companies, insurance companies, saying, listen, this lady's hurt pretty bad. She can't have surgery, but it's permanent injury. Here's all the documents. Here's all the medical bills. You just pay us the limits. And I remember the laughter on their side. I mean, or hidden laughter from the insurance company and its lawyers, basically saying, "We're never paying you on this. Medical bills aren't high, et cetera, and whatever." And so Patrick and I had to actually impanel a jury on that case, and in Cook County, and talk about a case that was it about a week long?
Yeah, I want to say 4 or 5 days. That sounds right.
Yeah, and I think that was the case, and I may be wrong, but that is maybe one of the cases where you took your first deposition of the expert.
Yeah, the defense expert orthopedic was the first deposition I took, and then I handed him over to you on cross-examination, and you took care of him.
Yeah, right. And so, but we ended up getting a very substantial punitive damages verdict against this cab company, which was affirmed on appeal, right?
It was.
Yeah.
Yep.
So so if you're want to have some fun and you just want to Google some cases, Google punitive damages and Shannon Law Group, and you'll find that case. And then you can look at other ones for all the other ones we're talking about, C.H. Robinson, et cetera.
Well, in the Baumricker appeal, it's heavily cited to the Talent case. So you made your own law, and then you made the court follow it.
Well, yeah, but that one I really liked because we got I think we got the verdict that day.
It was the same day. Yep.
Yeah, same day. And so our client, who was a hero in my world, Marge. So Marge, they offered her zero forever, and then during trial, they said, "Hey, we'll give you X, and not even near the policy limits." And this brave lady who was living paycheck to paycheck basically just said, "No, I want to see what the jury has to say." Talk about gutsy. Talk about a little bit of pressure that Pat and I felt. But I loved it. I loved every minute of her saying, "Hey, listen, let's see what the jury has to say." And the jury had a lot to say. They gave her, what we asked for the compensatory damages, and then they gave her, I think it was like, how much did they give her in punitive damages?
$500K.
So $500,000 in punitive damages on a case that they should have paid those punitive damages, and they did. They paid every dime of that. And so I was, that was a fun case for, in retrospect, fun. None of it was fun during it because these trials are just like, I don't know, gut wrenching because it's a ton of risk that goes in when you impanel a jury, because they could come back and say, "We don't agree with you and we don't like you and you're getting nothing." And that's the people you could get. My experience with jury trials has been that they usually get it right, and maybe not totally embraced our viewpoint on the thing, but they usually get it right. They usually will apply a common sense, but we as plaintiffs and lawyers are writing the movie, and it's got to be a truthful movie. It's got to be, we have the burden of proof. We have to put on the evidence. We have to make sure that we have the witnesses there. We have to make sure that we put on everything that we should. We're the ones that have to expose all the things that happened that led to this. And in that one, what basically happened is they never interviewed this cab driver. Never interviewed him, didn't know him, didn't know anything about him, and hired him, didn't know about all of his background, etc. And this was not a great guy. And so they lied about it. And these folks, these good folks from Cook County, told them so. And that's what I like about our business.
Yeah, and in that case, the driver didn't show up to trial, and I think that showed up in the verdict is that the jury wasn't happy that he didn't consider it important enough to be there.
Is this a type of field where you're sitting in your office and you never go out and learn new things, or is it something that you constantly got to learn?
So one of the reasons I really like this job and trucking in particular is that there is no sort of boilerplate case. There's some through lines that are consistent with any auto case or any personal injury case really, but I really enjoy the cases where I have to totally immerse myself in a world that I'm not familiar with and learn the ins and outs of it so that I can talk to people who know a lot more about the subject and figure out, kind of why things happened and if they shouldn't have happened, why they shouldn't have happened.
So what do some lawyers that take on these cases that don't have the background, experience, training, et cetera, what do they do or not do that's a problem?
I think the biggest mistake in trucking cases is treating it like it's a motor vehicle case. You can have, lawyers that kind of have some background in personal injury who can hang their own shingle, and for the most part, they might be able to handle most auto cases. If they're, again, there's no boilerplate, but if they're not a ton of complexities like a rear end type collision. But with a truck, even if it seems obvious, the liability or the damages, there's a lot more to it. And so if you just treat it like a motor vehicle case, you might not be peeling back the onion as much as you need to. You might not be seeking all the documents that you should be getting that can help prove your case. So that's one that I've seen before. And we've had a number of referring guys who they handle a ton of auto accident cases, and they say for the trucking ones, we're going to let these guys run with it because it's a different animal.
Right. And, one of the things that I've seen, let me know if you think I'm wrong, is recognizing the injury. So when I was a defense lawyer for 8 years, we handled a lot of really major injuries. I tried a case in which the plaintiff claims that she became a paraplegic as a result of a car crash. She blamed it on the vehicle, the lack of proper seat back, restraint system, all these types of things. And I really, to this day, don't believe that the plaintiff ever understood the mechanism of injury. Or actually the injury itself. And so what happens sometimes with these cases, if you get a lawyer that's not sophisticated and understands the medical records, understands mechanism of injury, understands kinesiology, all these types of things that we need to understand in these types of cases, they'll not see a brain injury. I mean, have you had any brain injury cases?
Yeah, certainly, yeah.
And in those cases, what are the complexities of that?
Well, one of the complexities is that the patient or the plaintiff is often at a limited capacity to communicate with you. So you might not be able to get all the information from the client just because they might not have a memory of it. Like we were talking about the one that had some post-traumatic amnesia right after the crash, so she had no recollection of it. So yeah, that's certainly a part of it. Another one is that it's not something that always shows up on scans. So broken bones, torn rotator cuffs, those things are really easy to explain to an insurance company and say, you've had 10 million other cases with these type of injuries. They show up on the scans. Brain injuries often don't, certainly not on like x-rays. And we've had to go get like more detailed MRI type scans that are sort of, they're solid medicine, but they're newer and they're not always used in a clinical setting. But those are things that we've had to go out to, because ultimately our job is to explain to the jury what the injury is. And so we need to use our experts to help us understand it so we can communicate that to jurors in ways that they can understand.
Right. And part of that is making sure that we rule out injuries. For example, we had a client that her kids were telling us that she was not the same as before the crash. Her friends were telling us that she wasn't the same as before the crash. She was had some underlying issues before, but now was way back to a base that it was not good prior to the crash. And it made sense because it was a high speed crash, and but it really wasn't showing up on some of the scans. And that's what you were talking about. And so having the sophistication and ability to have these folks examined by experts and for them to put them through the tests they need to put them through, et cetera, because the other side is going to get somebody to say, oh, this person had a mild concussion, which concussion means brain injury. Just for the listeners, concussion means brain injury. So a mild brain injury that got better. And so they're paid to say that. They will say that. They will say that no matter what is, So our job is to make sure that we can get in front of the jury, not only what their life was like beforehand and afterwards, but also experts that can explain this. And so we're talking with folks that are the leaders in their field, and that's expensive. So a lot of this comes down to with some lawyers is they're not willing to spend the money to have their client evaluated. And that's a difference, I think, in folks that take larger cases and they don't, is that, we're willing to spend the money because we understand that you need that to prove your case. I can't tell you how many times when I was a defense attorney, I was looking at lawyers that were handling these huge cases and not spending any money on the case and missed the biggest injury that the person had. And I was sitting there and I'd be like, what are you doing, pal? Why are you taking this case? You see this as some sort of, way that you're going to hit the lottery or what for your case, but you have no idea what you're doing. And did a disservice to his client. One of the reasons in the back of my mind, I said, listen, if and when I become a plaintiff's attorney, we're not going to be like that. We're going to make sure that we spend the money and make sure that that's exposed, that the defense is exposed, and we get to the bottom of not only liability, but damages, because that's what the cases are about. So let me ask you some questions about, just the legal environment. Are there any takes that you have that are against, that you don't believe, like go against the current?
The one I had jotted down is this sort of feels like an old wives' tale of what cases are worth. And it's, I think, been promoted by insurance companies. It must have, that your case is worth about 3 times what specials are. Specials are economic damages, meaning medical bills and your lost wages. And so basically, if you have 20,000 in lost wages and you have, or medical bills and you have 5,000 in lost wages, your specials would be 25. The quick math would be 75 grand is what the value of your case is. And I just think that that's such a short-sighted way of viewing cases. I don't even know if people do it anymore, but I still hear like adjusters say it on the phone. And it just does not paint a full picture of what was lost. Because $20,000 medical bills doesn't tell you anything about how it's disrupted this person's life or how it's impacted their career prospects or any of those things. But if you get to know your client and you can communicate that story, then the value of the case goes up a lot.
Yeah, I think we need to get more of, especially in bigger injury cases. Like typically we'll take the cases that have a permanent injury, significant injury, and the reason why we do that is because the case is never about medical bills. It's never about that, because the medical bills, if a plaintiff recovers them, it already went to somebody else, a medical provider. And the case is, I'm not bringing a case for a medical provider. I'm just not doing it. I'm bringing it for the person. And the real damages for people that are injured are their pain and suffering that they've had to endure and will endure for the rest of their life. And then their loss of a normal life. And if they're disfigured, hopefully they're not disfigured, but if they are disfigured, but those are the big things that we're looking at. And those are things that I'll never explain or have an insurance adjuster understand or agree with me, et cetera. Never in a million years. So that's why we have to go to a jury, to their peers, to understand, because they get it. They get it. If you don't have the mental capacity to balance your checkbook anymore, or the ability to walk to the drugstore and get your medications, or the ability to play with your kids anymore, or lift them, or all those types of things, that's worth something.
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of one of the most important parts of our job is being able to communicate that. Because you can put in a letter, a client had a broken arm, client had 20,000 in medical bills, but you can't, it's much harder to convey in a letter. And often you have to go to trial to convey it to a jury. What it's like when a client loses a piece of themselves or how they view themselves operating in the world.
So what's a legal trend right now that concerns you?
Well, we have a couple that are a little concerning that are up in the Supreme Court. Broker liability is one of them. Brokers were the defendants in my last jury trial and also in Joe's Talent case that he'd been talking about. So they don't like that they're on the hook for judgments and verdicts for their operations, basically finding drivers or trucking companies for shippers. So they're trying to create loopholes to avoid litigation or risk to them. And then another one, we have a handful of sort of mass tort cases against a large chemical manufacturer. And that case is also up in front of the Supreme Court right now. It's a corporation that's looking for an out so that they don't have to face all of these lawsuits because there's tens of thousands of lawsuits. And so, yeah, I'm certainly concerned about some of the macro elements and the makeup of the court and what they're going to do. It's hard to predict.
One of the things that, we look at different stages of our career is what success means. And what does success mean to you now as opposed to, when you first started?
Yeah, I think it's hard when you're starting to not have your success be defined by the numerical value of what cases you've handled. So I've got settlements worth X. It's what basically you compare yourself to whatever you see on a billboard or on a TV commercial about the successes of those lawyers who are promoting it. Now I just feel a lot more like I'm not so much concerned about numbers. Obviously, you care about results, but I want clients to feel comfortable referring us to other people, saying that these guys worked hard for me. They came through for me. They're very sophisticated at what they do. I never hesitate to call them. Things about the relational aspects of the job as opposed to the pure results oriented.
And what are you still figuring out?
I'm learning every day, learning different aspects of the trucking industry. Every case you find some other regulation that maybe you hadn't had to focus on before. So it's a constant learning experience. And we don't just do trucking cases. We've had a handful of death and serious injury cases that are involving like factories, manufacturer of products that I didn't even know existed before we got the phone call. So learning about those, what they're for, how the machines work, how they could have been made safer, things like that, you're learning all the time.
So you're 12 years into your career. I always tell people the first 5 years as a lawyer are a blur because you really don't know anything. And you basically have to have a lot of resilience and toughness. And then you start learning more and more and more. But what's next for you?
Well, we've got a good stable of cases that I really like with clients that I really like. So we're going to keep moving those through, and then I don't know. We'll see where it all takes us. I'm looking forward to trying a lot more cases. There's a while there because of COVID, and insurance companies just not really allowing us to, by offering settlement amounts that were reasonable, where we didn't try a ton of cases. So I'm looking to get back into that where we're trying them all the time and giving our clients their day in court.
And what's most exciting for you in the future, other than that the White Sox are, I think, a half game out first?
They're a half game out. They're probably a little bit ahead of schedule. They're probably still in their championship window from the last core of guys. But we've got a fun summer coming up. We got the World Cup. We've got basketball playoffs.
Good.
It's nice having a decent baseball team. It makes the summers more enjoyable.
Absolutely. What piece of advice would you give to your younger self if you could give it right now?
I would say try to learn to control what you can control. I used to take it as sort of personal slights when opposing counsel would, do something to me. If you've been doing it for long enough, you kind of realize that they've got a job to do. So they're trying to poke holes in our case, and that's what they're paid to do. So I don't, if an opposing counsel files a motion or wants to take what I think is an unnecessary deposition, I kind of just let it roll off my back and not let it affect me in ways that I would have let it affect me before. So.
Well said. Well, this has been a tremendous conversation with Pat Cummings on the Underdog podcast. What we've seen is that this is a lot of hard work, and the folks that are that need us at our law firm are people that can't help themselves, and they're up against a huge bad situation. They need us, and I'm more than happy to entrust Pat Cummings and his team to any of these cases, and I'll bet on them every single time. So thanks, Pat, for coming in. Really appreciated the time, and I hope it's, we'll get you in here soon and you'll give us some updates on what's going on. Sound good?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Joe. Appreciate it.